Democratic Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. What do you think about the president's position or his lawyer's position that there isn't a legislative purpose to looking at these documents? Is there a legislative purpose?
Well, there's certainly a Supreme Court precedent that recognizes what our founding fathers recognized, that Congress has responsibility to do oversight. We should remember this is the first president in 40 years that has refused to disclose his tax returns. The president could certainly provide the documents the committee is seeking. He apparently refused to do that. So they have a responsibility to collect evidence to conduct their oversight. And I think it's just a larger problem. You know, that's one of the reasons the Democrats passed H.R. 1 first out of the box to bring major reforms to raise ethical standards, bring more transparency, get money out of politics, amplify the voices of ordinary Americans, and getting the government to work for the people of this country again. So, you know, part of our responsibility is oversight. The committee has to do their work.
You're saying oversight, and I respect that. I'm just saying their argument is that it's only supposed to be for purposes of legislating. And it sounds like you concede the point that this isn't about legislating, it's about oversight. And under those guides, you think that, yes, you do have the right to them on an oversight basis.
Yeah, I do think that it's the responsibility of Congress to also do oversight of the executive branch and the conduct of executive officials. Mason indicated that in the early days of the Republic. So Congress has a well-established responsibility to conduct oversight to be sure legislation is being properly implemented and that people are not suffering from conflicts of interest or improper motives and that people are working for the people of this country. So I think it's perfectly appropriate.
Do you worry that it looks like presidential harassment to voters and to people out there, and that no matter what your intention is, that it could end up doing harm to Democrats?
Well, look, I understand that there are some people who think that Congress shouldn't do oversight, and the president sort of rich when the president of the United States tries to make himself out to be a victim, you know, the most powerful man on the planet.
But it works in some corners. Do you worry about, I know you don't believe it, but do you worry about that it could hurt Democrats?
I'm going to answer your question. Look, I think we have the responsibility to do two things. Democrats have to deliver on the agenda we ran on. Driving down the cost of prescription drugs, preserving protection for pre-existing conditions, raising family incomes by rebuilding the country, a bold infrastructure plan, and taking on the corruption in Washington. We're going to continue. We've done the work. We've already passed H.R. 1. We've passed some legislation out of committee to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. We're working on an infrastructure plan. We passed equal pay for equal work. We're doing our work addressing the economic issues that face the American people. At the same time, we have to do oversight. And I know that's uncomfortable for people, but Congress has a responsibility. Whatever party, the legislative branch has a responsibility. And I know there are some Trump supporters who think any oversight is unfair, but we have a long tradition in this country of doing oversight of the executive branch. It's part of our responsibility. We have to do both.
I don't want to run out of time without talking about our second point, which is after the release of the Mueller report, Democrats are divided on moving ahead with impeachment proceedings. You know this. Senator Elizabeth Warren is one 2020 candidate supporting the idea. Others, though, urge caution. House Democrats are set to discuss their next steps in a conference call this afternoon. While President Trump tweeted this earlier today, only high crimes and misdemeanors can lead to impeachment. There were no crimes by me, no collusion, no obstruction, so you can't impeach. It was the Democrats that committed the crimes, not your Republican president. Tables are finally turning on this witch hunt. He's maybe perhaps baiting you with that tweet. At the same time, Democrats are going to get on that conference call. What does that discussion look like, do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, it's very important to recognize, I read the Mueller report in its entirety, including all the appendices. The breathtaking attack on our democracy by the Russians should be concerned to everyone. So let's set that aside and say we need to take action to protect our democracy. And I think people should read the report. There is ample evidence in that report of obstruction of justice. It's very clear that the only reason the president was in charge with obstruction of justice is that the special counsel concluded the DOJ memo precluded it. But there was real evidence of the president attempting to interfere with the investigation. What I think we have to do is have a very...
Does it rise to the level of impeachment in your mind?
Well, I think there is no question that obstruction of justice is an impeachable offense. We have more work to do. We need to see the full report. We need to see the supporting materials. There's a process. We'll have a series of hearings. But we should take this very seriously. And I think Democrats will continue to be very judicious about this. This is a very sober moment for the country. No one should be excited about this. This is a very serious I think that report is disturbing. It's very damning about the president's conduct. He encouraged people to lie. He encouraged people to not be forthright about events. He himself lied. He attempted to fire the special counsel. He attempted to get Don McGahn to lie about his effort to fire him. So there's a lot there to be really concerned about. And I think we have a lot more information to gather, but we need to do it in a judicious way. We have a process. We need to do it in a fair way. But we can do both things, move forward on the economic issues and the important priorities we've set to improve the lives of the American people, and we can hold this administration accountable and do our work.
Okay, sir, thank you for coming on today. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Now, of course, some House Democrats are considering an obstruction of justice case against the president after the release of the Mueller report. But former Whitewater independent counsel Ken Starr telling Neil on Cavuto Live that what the president did does not amount to obstruction.
First of all, I don't think that even if he had fired Bob Mueller, that had been carried through, that would constitute obstruction, right? So I'm just talking about the act that seems to have really galvanized everyone's attention and energy. Oh, he wanted to fire the special counsel. The president had the authority to do that.
To former Californian Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, where he sees all of this going. Remember, he was a member of the Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us. Where is this going?
Well, I hardly recognize Elijah Cummings. You know, he was my ranking member in the Obama administration. And, you know, we were lied to by Eric Holder. We had to hold him in contempt. And Elijah Cummings never said, oh, by the way, we should impeach him when we discovered that he had lied to us, that he had covered up information, he'd actually obstructed us. You know, the reality is, I think the president's team, headed by Rudy Giuliani, said this very well. This is about searching for the thing that's going to stop the president from winning re-election. They couldn't undo the election. They're now trying not to impeach him. I don't expect to see articles of impeachment, but I do see that they're clearly trying to get his tax records, his business records. They're trying to use the power of subpoena not to do oversight over some known misconduct, but in fact to see if they can find something that they can use against him in the re-elect.
You know, you mentioned your former colleague. I want to share the House Oversight Committee Chairman, now Chairman Elijah Cummings. He was on Face the Nation signaling his next move. Let's take a listen.
What do you think needs to be investigated now?
Oh my God! I think we need to look at the finances of this president.
Why? What exactly are they, you know, I mean, again, you know, if you're just going down rabbit holes looking for whatever you can find, but it's interesting that all of these actions seem like they would normally be triggered by evidence, but this time it looks like they're looking for evidence of anything.
Well, exactly. You know, they know they want to hang the president. They just don't yet know the charge. And when collusion didn't work, now they're going to try obstruction. When that doesn't work, they're going to try tax evasion. They've got a long list of hypothetical charges for which they have no known crime. You know, Elijah Cummings and I sat side by side. We did good legislation together, but it's very clear that he has gone off of the proper playbook, which is find something that went wrong. Brian Terry was killed in the desert in Fast and Furious. That gave us a reason. 4 men died in Benghazi. That gave us a reason. Have an actual event that you then want to keep from happening again. Right now, the only event they want to keep from happening again is the election of President Trump. And that's not an event that the Oversight Committee or the Judiciary Committee has the right to investigate. That simply is politics at its worst.
What do you make Ken Starr in that soundbite saying that now the Democrats have galvanized around obstruction? Let's not forget they were galvanized around collusion for a couple of years, and I guess this sticks out to them as the next potential path to go down.
Well, it is, particularly because it's a vague sort of thing. Collusion wasn't even a charge per se. It sort of became the cool thing to say. Obstruction is kind of vague. What does it mean when you obstruct? If I get pulled over and I shouldn't be pulled over, I haven't done anything wrong, and I say to the cop, what the hell did you pull me over for? Is that disorderly conduct, or is that obstruction, or am I simply asserting righteous indignation? The president, after all, was totally innocent. He was totally vindicated, and so yes, He was upset. Why wouldn't someone be upset? Remember, the Democrats accused him of treason. Collusion with the Russians is another name for treason. You've accused President Trump of being a traitor to his country, and he's upset. And what a surprise. But you know what? You saw him today at the Easter egg hunt.
Right.
He is a happy man who is making America great again. He's been able to get our economy rolling at 3%. He's pushing an agenda. You know, there's $1 trillion deal pending with China. There are two massive deals right now with Canada and Mexico that the Democrats are claiming they will not ratify, even though it creates 100,000 new jobs in America.
Let me jump in because we only have a minute left, and you know, you talked about being angered and pissed off. It's not just politicians. I think the media also. There was a scene yesterday. It was Bob Mueller leaving Easter Mass. I want to share it with you in the audience.
Sir, could I ask you a couple of questions? Will you testify before Congress, sir?
No comment.
Are you sure about that, sir? If he were anybody but the president, would Mr. Trump be indicted, sir?
Some would call that harassment, Congressman. This went on until Mueller actually got in his car and drove away. What do you make of it?
Well, thank goodness he's a career professional, and he understood that giving them a story wasn't the right thing. Look, the reality is that he took his charge of trying to find a crime against the Trump campaign. That's what special prosecutors do. He was pointed to it, and he indicted everyone on everything he could find, and what he found was the president committed no crime, and that, in fact, we are now dealing with the baseless accusers, which was the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton, who in fact created false evidence that need to be at least held accountable publicly.
It's amazing. I mean, he was a media superstar and darling for 2 years, and now he can't go to church. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.